Islam is a quite interesting religion, and to really first understand the details of it, you have to understand its history. And Islam began in Mecca, which is in our modern day called Saudi Arabia, and it began in the 7th century, so it's one of the youngest world religions that we have today. So this religion of Islam began in the lifetime of a man named Muhammad, who was their prophet. And this man was born in Mecca in 570 AD, and he was actually visited by Gabriel, an angel, when he was in this cave meditating, and this angel asked him to recite the words of Allah, and he brought him this inspiration, this revelation. And so this is when he was about 40, and then just 3 years later he began preaching these messages around in Mecca. And very quickly this religion became very popular. And so the Muslims believe that, the Quran, which is an equivalent to the Christian Bible, was words written down by Muhammad's scribes, because he actually could not read or write himself. So he had these scribes that would write down what he said, and this ultimately became the Quran. And he preached until the day he died in 632 AD. And after Muhammad died, Islam, of course, continued. There were a series of leaders. They were called caliphs, and they were the successors to Muhammad. And this was a system called caliphate, and it was just like how the leadership was kind of set up to not really replace the prophet, but keep structure within their religion. And actually during the first 4 reigns of the caliphs, they were able to conquer a large part of the world in the Middle East. And this included Syria, Palestine, Iran, and Iraq. And this religion became popular so quickly, it was spread into Europe, Asia, Africa. And so these caliphates lasted for many, many centuries. And this was actually eventually became what we know as the Ottoman Empire. All of us learned about that in school. And this controlled large areas in the Middle East until about 1917. And that was when the World War I began. And so today, Islam is the second largest religion in the world, just after Christianity. So they have approximately 1.8 billion members, and it's the fastest growing religion in the world, and it's predicted that it will eventually pass Christianity in numbers, and that will probably happen by the end of this century. And just a little more background knowledge, within Islam there's actually even 2 kind of sects, and they're called Sunni and Shiite. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but the main difference is after Muhammad's death, they were kind of unsure where to go next. They didn't really have instruction of who would be the successor. So these 2 sects were kind of split in opinions of how that should be handled. And eventually that kind of led to 2 different groups, but ultimately they have a lot of the same values. So that's kind of a brief history of the Islamic religion and how it began.
The word Islam translated means surrender, submission, commitment, and peace. Thus, Islam could be defined as a path to attain complete peace through voluntary submission to the divine will. Islam has many sects and different belief groups, but most would accept that there are 6 main beliefs in Islam. First, the belief in one God, who is Allah, the Arabic word for God. Belief in angelic visitations, as evidenced by the visitation of Gabriel to the prophet Muhammad. Belief in the holy books, including the Torah, as revealed to the prophet Moses, the Bible as revealed to the prophet Jesus, and the Quran as revealed to the prophet Muhammad. Belief in all the prophets sent by God, from Noah down through Jesus, Muhammad being the last of the prophets. Although they believe Jesus to be a holy man and a prophet called by God, they do not see him as the Son of God or that he redeemed us from our sins in the way that most Christians do. Belief in the day of judgment and that there will be life after death. And finally, the belief in the divine decree, something that implies that all things must occur according to God's will. Muslims share the belief that Islam is a religion that should be practiced daily. There are 5 pillars of Islam that help us understand what living Islam every day looks like. The first pillar is Shahada, which means the declaration of faith. Or in other words, that we should bear witness or testify that there is no God except one, who is Allah, and that Muhammad is his prophet or messenger. The second is Salat, which is the ritual prayer. There are 5 daily prayers performed at dawn, noon, mid-afternoon, sunset, and night. The prayers are offered in Arabic and face in the direction of Mecca. Zakah, which means the alms tax, includes giving 2.5% of one's wealth to the poor and needy. Shaum, which is the fasting. Muslims fast during the daylight hours in the 9th month of the Islamic lunar calendar called Ramadan. The purpose is to remind people of the goodness of what they have and to show equality with the poor. The last is Hajj, which means pilgrimage. Muslims believe in making a pilgrimage to Mecca, to the Kaaba, at least once in their lifetime. The Kaaba is a monument believed to have been by Abraham and one of his sons. Muhammad restored it to worship Allah. For this reason, it holds special sacred significance for Muslims. While people generally see Islam as an obscure and isolated faith, there's actually a lot of common ground between Islam and Christianity. Both place value in personal growth and closeness to God over worldly recognition. Both believe in prophets, ancient and modern, and in following their counsels. Both rely on the Holy Scriptures to divine their morals and direct their lives. And both believe that we will be held accountable for our actions in this life and that there will be a life after death.
Muslims throughout the world are using media in their personal lives since the Islam faith does not prevent members from using any sort of media. In 2013, the Pew Research Center revealed that Muslims who use the internet and other forms of media were more likely to see similarities between Islam and Christianity. Regardless of their use of media, the survey showed that Muslims say there is only one way to interpret their faith, and that Islam alone leads to eternal life in heaven. Internet use does not appear to make any differences in Muslims' views or faith. Muslims' use of media in their personal lives are often associated with their attitude towards Western popular culture. Muslims who use the internet are more inclined to watch Western movies, music, and television shows. When it comes to their religious lives, Muslims tend to use media to spread their religion. Since 9/11, the Muslim marketplace has offered faith-centered digital content produced by and aimed at Muslim women. Muslim women are using social media as a way to attract global followers and interests from businesses and mainstream media. For example, in the UK, Muslim lifestyle media channels are a part of the technological age that is reshaping spaces for minority identities. Muslim bloggers are optimizing their reach by working across multiple media platforms such as YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Muslims have also used social media to fight ISIS and Islamophobia. Overall, the Islamic faith has a positive view of using different forms of media in their personal and religious lives.
So now we're going to talk about media use within Islam. So to give you some background on this, in the Arab region of the world, Facebook is the #1 social media networking site, with Twitter following closely behind. So those two are the most prevalently used platforms in that region. And because there is such a great concentration of Islamic believers in that area of the world, we can guess that Facebook and Twitter are going to be the platforms that they use day to day. There are different opinions on the media use within the religion, though. And one of those beliefs is positive. There are some leaders that think that social media is a great tool in helping to carry out some beliefs of the religion. One of those beliefs being Ummah, which basically means a connection between believers. So in older times, because of geography, the language, this wasn't a concept that was really easy for younger generations, but now, especially between the different groups like the Shiites and the Sunnis, this connection between other believers, even though their belief systems might be a little bit different in some areas, their ummah is able to happen because of social media. So some of the leaders that are really positive about social media, their names are Muhammad al-Arifi, Ahmed al-Shugari. They both have millions of followers on Twitter. They tend to tweet out prophetic types of verses, things from the Quran, daily thoughts and prayers. And all of those things tend to create a connection between believers that just couldn't happen before without social media. Now, some of the leaders that are a little bit more conservative and critical, one of their names is Abdul Aziz al-Sheikh. He is from Saudi Arabia. And the reason he's critical of social media is because of a belief called halam, which basically means that they want to keep integrity and dignity and respect within themselves. And because of the kind of fake nature that sometimes social media can have, it can promote lies, different personas maybe that aren't true to ourselves. He believes that social media should not be used by people of the faith in Islam because it just doesn't promote the right things about the person. So there are differing views based on different parts of the religion, but one of the things that's very strong in Islam is their belief in proselytizing, a lot like the LDS Church. So in recent years, they've created accounts for Muhammad, their founder, or other deceased religious scholars or prophets, and people are in charge of these accounts, and they send out daily thoughts on Twitter, for example. And those are things that have been able to connect the younger generation of Islam into the older traditions of Islam. So for some, social media is definitely a way to share those thoughts, to be involved in their religion by being able to share with other people not of the faith, and to connect with people within the faith.
Looking at most media, it appears that a lot of times the coverage portrays Muslims and Islam in a negative light. Research suggests that Muslims and Islam are oftentimes associated with terrorists and conflict of mainstream culture, meaning that Muslims are seen as un-American. Some stereotypes that have been associated with Muslims include terrorist, clueless foreigner, and/or oppressed wife. Another misconception associated with Muslims is that they are all people from the Middle East known as Arabs. Arabs are people from the Middle East, can be of any religion. Muslims can be from any race and are a diverse group of people who follow the Islamic faith. Negative portrayals of Muslim people are not new. For example, in 1990, the National Review aired a story titled "The Muslims Are Coming, the Muslims Are Coming." After the 9/11 terrorist attack, there was an increase in hate crime, and there was also an increase of negative representation of Muslims in the Western media. For example, in 2003, Newsweek blared from the newsstand, "Al-Qaeda in America, how the terrorists are recruiting and plotting here." Television series such as 24, Homeland, and The Unit, The Agency, NCIS, Sleeper Cell, and many others use post-9/11 fears of Muslim people. Many portrayals of Muslim people in these shows are oftentimes associated with terrorism, or at least have a storyline that includes it. Oftentimes, these shows loosely portray the Muslim faith incorrectly due to lack of research. However, in 2019, it seems that the one-dimensional Muslim characters we've seen in television is starting to change. In shows such as The Bold Type, Elite, Superstore, and others seek to add more to their Muslim characters. One excellent example is in a TV series called Counterpart. The actress Betty Gabriel plays a character named Naya Temple, who is an African-American practicing Muslim who does not cover. The actress had to do research on Islam and learn Arabic as well as many of the Salawat prayers. This portrayal helps show that there's more than just one type of Muslim person. Though there are more positive shows and portrayals of Muslim people these days, there's still a ways to go to combat negative stereotyping and Islamophobia in America.